All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a really fantastic book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And trust me, some of the ideas in here, well, they're not what you'd expect.
So the whole book really boils down to this one big question, right? Why do super smart people do absolutely crazy things with their money? You've seen it, I've seen it, it makes no sense. Or does it? The answer is pretty fascinating.
Okay, so here's the core idea. We're taught to think about money like it's physics. Strict rules, formulas, predictable outcomes. But Housel's point is, that's totally wrong. It's not a hard science. Finance is actually a soft skill, guided by our messy, emotional, totally unpredictable human behavior.
And if you want a perfect example of this, look no further than this guy, Ronald Read. He was a janitor, a gas station attendant. No fancy degrees, no big Wall Street job. And yet, this man secretly amassed an $8 million fortune. How? By living simply and just being patient with his investments. It wasn't about what he knew. It was all about how he behaved.
And that right there brings us to our first major concept. Money isn't math. Plain and simple. It's a soft skill where how you act is way more important than what you know from a textbook.
The reason for this is that our choices with money are so personal. Your own history, the way you see the world, your ego, all of that stuff shapes your decisions way more than any spreadsheet ever could. What looks crazy to me might make perfect sense to you, all because of our different life experiences. Okay, moving on to our second big idea. Let's talk about luck, risk, and hubris. This is all about tearing down that old myth that our financial success is 100% based on how smart or hardworking we are. And the perfect case study here is Bill Gates. I mean, obviously the guy is brilliant. He worked incredibly hard. No one's debating that. But Housel points out a fascinating detail. He also had a 1 in a million stroke of pure luck that you just can't ignore. Let's just break this down. Back in 1968, you had about 303 million kids of high school age in the entire world. Now, of that massive number, about 18 million of them lived right here in the United States. And of those, you zoom in a little more, and you get about 270,000 living in Washington state. And then, out of all those kids, only about 300 went to a place called Lakeside School. Why does that matter? Because it was one of the only high schools on the planet that had a computer. And Bill Gates just happened to be one of those 300 kids. We're talking literal 1 in a million odds. But here's where it gets dangerous. Gates himself said it best. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. See, when you think all your success is just skill and you forget about luck, you get totally blind to its twin sibling, risk. And that kind of blindness leads us straight into our third big idea, the danger of more. It's this trap of constantly moving the financial goalposts, and it's a game that is basically impossible to win. There's this incredible story in the book. The author Kurt Vonnegut is at a party with his friend Joseph Heller, the guy who wrote Catch-22. Vonnegut points out that their billionaire host made more money in a single day than Catch-22 earned in its entire history. And Heller's response is just perfect. He says, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. So what happens when you have no concept of enough? Well, you get these really tragic stories. Guys like Rajat Gupta, who was already worth over $100 million, but he threw it all away. His reputation, his freedom, chasing $1 billion through insider trading. Or Bernie Madoff, who was already a rich, successful businessman, but risked everything to build this massive lie. They had it all, and it just wasn't enough. And a huge part of this problem is what you could call the social comparison ladder. Think about it. A rookie baseball player makes $500,000 a year and feels poor next to his teammate Mike Trout, who's making $36 million. But then Mike Trout might look at a top hedge fund manager pulling in $340 million and feel like he's falling behind. It just never ends. The ceiling on this game is so ridiculously high that basically nobody ever hits it. It's a battle you're guaranteed to lose. So, what's the only way to win? You just have to refuse to play. You have to define your own sense of enough and stop looking at what everyone else has.
So if constantly chasing more is a trap, what's the point? Well, that brings us to our last section, the real value of wealth. And the answer might surprise you. It's not about the fancy stuff. It's about control.
Housel makes this really crucial distinction. Getting wealthy. That often means taking risks, being optimistic, putting yourself out there. But staying wealthy, that's a totally different game. That requires humility, a healthy dose of fear, and the discipline to just survive, to not get wiped out.
And this really flips the whole idea of wealth on its head. True wealth isn't the Ferrari or the giant house. It's what you don't see. It's the car you didn't buy, the money you didn't spend. Wealth is the financial assets that are still there, working for you, giving you options.
So if wealth isn't for buying more and more stuff, what's it for? It's for buying this. Freedom. The ability to wake up in the morning and do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want. It's about owning your own time.
And that, right there, is the ultimate payoff. Having control over your time, having options, that's the highest dividend money will ever pay you. It's a return that's more valuable than any luxury item you can imagine. Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. After all this, you have to ask yourself, what is the price of your freedom? And, maybe more importantly, are you actually willing to pay it?